Hey guys, and welcome back to Regretsit. Brexit England, Northern Ireland, and Eastern Europe. And in Brexit England, George Osborne has been horribly attacked at his very own wedding. An assassin turned up and threw confetti over the happy couple. So, really, they're making international news that a woman threw confetti. It was orange confetti. I think that that's what made the news because it's orange confetti. So that made it seem like that it was Just Stop Oil. Even though Just Stop Oil did condone the actions, though they said it was not one of our operatives because if you notice, the person didn't bust open their shirt to reveal a Just Stop Oil T-shirt, as they like to do. But I think right that when you are a nasty person, this kind of thing can happen at your wedding. And George Osborne, yeah, when it comes down to nasty, George Osborne's right up there because he is a real, filth, a flea bag. He's just this filthy, disgusting person, horrible, nasty individual. All that massive education, right? And having coming from like a rich family, so having always been rich his whole life, and this man gets into power and he brings in austerity, which has led to the deaths of like between 300 and 400,000 people. Reports say between 350,000, but when they report like that, we might as well just go a bit higher. So it's between 300 and 400,000 people. Those numbers is just lower, right? Than a bit lower than what was murdered in Iraq by Tony Blair and George W. Bush and the rest of the coalition forces, right? Those numbers are just slightly lower, right? Understand, right? That what these people have done is a genocide upon the British people. That's what they've done. It's plain and simple. That's what they've done. It's a genocide. When they come in, austerity measures, right, is supposed to save you money. That's what it's supposed to do. Save you money, austerity. Right? But it never works like that. All it does, right, is it increases like unemployment, homelessness. It destroys your healthcare, your healthcare in your country. Just destroys it. I mean, what's happening in the NHS right now, we can relate back to a lot of George Osborne's policies. Because where you cut back on all these services, because they took right £500 billion. They cut services. They cut services. So that's how much they've saved. It's £500 billion that they've saved. And when they came into power in 2010, the debt was 800 billion. They took us into austerity, cut services by £500 billion, and the debt now stands at 2,800 billion. So they have put on 2 trillion in 13 years. 2 trillion in 13 years. That's what they've put on. And remember, we're told that these are some of the brightest people in the country because they've all got backgrounds of places like Oxford and Cambridge. They all go to the best. Some of them have gone to universities in America and stuff like that, right? So these are supposed to be the brightest people around, and look at the state. Look what they've done. But George Osborne, right, is what gets me with these type of people, because a lot of people, the media is just coming out and saying, how dare this woman, right? You say, well, mate, she threw confetti. She wasn't there chucking rotten tomatoes or rotten watermelons like I would have liked to have done. But you see, it would be different. I couldn't even get that close to George Osborne to throw confetti. Right? Because I would have been taken, this. If you looked at this woman, yeah, grey hair, well dressed, right? So British, right? In her protest, but Just Stop Oil. People just assumed that she was from Just Stop Oil, but as I said, they've said no. This wasn't one of our operatives. We only wish she was. But I suppose it's just for the fact that she used orange confetti. I suppose that's what led everyone to that point. But when you look at how this whole climate change thing has been dealt with anyway, they get more. They get on the news and they get on all sorts of media if they make a nuisance of themselves, right? And it can go worldwide, but nothing about what their issue is. And even when they're interviewed on TV or on the radio or whatever, the interviewer, right, never wants to know what their issue is. Just like the interviewer is just like, well, why do you think it's okay to block the M25? Why do you think it's okay to stop ambulances? I said, well, to stop ambulances so they can go and queue up in the hospital. That's what these people should be. But they get all flustered. These people get all flustered because a lot of them they're not used to speaking on the TV and things like that. I've seen it happen this morning. To a lady on the TV this morning with what's his name, Ed Balls and Susanna Reid. Where the woman, she said that she said, I wouldn't have done that protest. I personally wouldn't have done that protest because if I got that close to George Osborne, I'd punch him in the face. I couldn't hold myself back from punching him in the face. That's what she said. And that, I think, is the thing that got their backs up immediately. Because she then went on to make the point that George Osborne is a climate change denier. That's what the headline, when you read the headline, right, of because all they have to do is Google it. So when they read the headline, that's what the headline basically is saying. Because, George Osborne said that he does not want Britain to be at the forefront of climate change. That was the headline. So therefore, that says to me, well, you're a climate change denier, because nobody who's not a climate change denier would want that to see that headline. Don't really matter about the content, what's inside there. Right, for whatever reasons you're saying that, you got the headline there. And now, if they had just done a simple search, but then no, they just all went on the attack and attack this woman, because she's not as articulate as them, and she's not as polished as them, and that's what they're used to dealing with. They're used to dealing with politicians that are very polished and can come on and just say a load of words, and it's just basically a word sandwich, and they haven't actually said anything, right, worthwhile listening to. I mean, if you hear Rishi Sunak, every single question literally will go back to what the people want is for me to stop the boats. That's the question. That'll be the thing that you hear from him all the time, just constantly. Anyway, so George Osborne, it amazes me that people like this, expect people not to be upset with them after they implement these type of policies, the policies that have led to hundreds of thousands of deaths in this country. And, it's, as I said, it's still going on. So 400,000 is probably nowhere near, because you can add a lot of the people in for COVID for that, because they would have cut a lot of the services that could have been there for things like COVID. I mean, just look, they've cut youth services, they've cut, how much libraries have they closed down? They've closed down how much police stations have they closed down? Ambulance, fire stations. How much have they closed down? They've just closed down so much of these things, right? And all of this is George Osborne's austerity measures. So for me, I can't go out and do this type of protest against George Osborne. I would like to, but I can't, right? Because things would work out a lot different for me, right? I would still be in the police station all now, right? Don't get that twisted. That's where I'd be right now. I'd still be, and when that happened Friday or Saturday, I'd still be in the police station right now. So I can't, you have to have these middle class people out there demonstrating on behalf of the people of the country, because otherwise there wouldn't be any demonstrations. Because on the weekend, there's There's loads of demonstrations. You got the West End. You got the West End where like that. There's demonstrations. There's loads of them up there, but you know, nobody really cares, right? Unless like you stop the tennis, the cricket, snooker, right? Or you climb up on the gantry on the M25, right? Or you throw orange confetti at a wedding. And welcome back to By Any Means Necessary. Thank you so much for all your messages sent me. Special thanks to everybody who signed up to my channel. I feel so blessed with so much people that signed up, so thank you so much for that. I'll go for all your messages. I'll answer as many as I can, but I will like messages for definite. America is to send cluster bombs to the Ukraine. Now, although I don't agree with cluster bombs because they're kind of dangerous. Well, all bombs are dangerous, but these are supposed to explode just before they hit the ground, but some of them don't. Now, I believe because you've got a couple of different types, right? Now, I think if 1%, if they're at 1%, so 1% of them don't open up or whatever. 1% of them don't explode. Then I think you can use them, but I think if they're 3 to 4, if they're over 3 or 4%, then they're completely illegal. And obviously, the ones that America is sending are probably in that range over 3. That's the reason why there's such a big thing about it. But you see, with the cluster bombs, they can years later. That's when they can explode on you years later. So so you could have like a kid pick them up years later, and then an adult pick them up, and they're basically like a hand grenade with no pin, and so you would definitely kill yourself if you picked one up and it goes off. So obviously it's not something that and on a general basis people use them in other people's countries, but on this occasion, Ukraine is actually using them in their own country. So it is a thing where they can cordon that area off and then clean them up themselves, and then clean that area up fully themselves. So so it's kind of understandable why Ukraine would say, send us that. We'll use that, because it's not because they're not going to use them in Russia. They're going to use them in Ukraine on Russians. So so it's although I don't like the weapon, as I said, I don't like the weapon, but I can understand why the Ukraine are saying, we'll use those. Fully understandable. And POTUS, President Biden, is in the UK to meet Rishi Sunak and the King later on today. But this is about 6 times in 6 months that Rishi Sunak has met with Joe Biden. These guys are meeting all the time. And Rishi should be like, "Wait, POTUS, right? Is there any chance that I could possibly get a trade deal?" Well, the thing's right. Britain does loads of trade with America as it is. But I suppose they probably want to get their hormone-injected beef and their buffalo wings that are the size of a small dog over to this country. And obviously they'd probably like to get a good part of our NHS services. So it's just amazing that that Rishi Sunak hasn't, but America have no need to do a deal with Britain anyway. All of that was just a complete illusion, all of it. Do you know what I mean? Because what difference would a trade deal with America make to this country? It's not really going to make that much difference. It's so far. Firstly, it's so far away, right? So the environmental credentials are not very good, and and then their food standards, right, are much lower than the EU food standards. Because in America, they have got they allow rodent droppings, rodent hairs and things like that. They allow for a certain amount, right, to be in say like a can of tinned oranges with in syrup. They allow for a certain percentage of whether it's rodent feces or whether it's rodent hair, and then a couple of other bits of dirty stuff. Whereas so they allow certain amounts. Whereas you just say, best we don't have any of that in ours, right? Best we don't have any mouse shit in our food. Yeah? Can we go with that? So, so that's the difference between, having a trade deal with America and having a trade deal with, like, with the EU. As I said, well, being part of the EU. Because I believe we've got a trade deal with the EU, but it's just not very favourable to us. 2 8-year-old girls have been killed by a dangerous driver in their school in Wimbledon. Just having a end of term garden party. 8 years old, and a teacher as well. I think a teacher as well is in hospital, but one of the girls I think was killed on the spot. The other one died in the hospital last night, Sunday night. Died in the hospital. So just one of the most horrendous stories. And I don't know why this woman's not in prison, because she's been she's been released. And I think she's got to go back to the police station next month, probably to be formally charged with dangerous driving. But she hasn't been charged yet, but she's been released. And I would say, she should really be held in custody. Because the car was like a Range Rover. I think it's Discovery, right? And those things, I'm sure those things are about 2.5 tons. So they're built like tanks. And it's such a strong car. Speaking of the range, it's such a Land Rover. Well, it's a Land Rover Discovery. Yeah, the thing with the they're such, they're proper tanks. Those type of cars are. So, it's just a absolutely horrendous story. Really, really bad. Just under 1,000 people crossed the Channel this weekend, and Rishi Sunak was out a few months back talking about how his small boats policy is working, because these people are going to be sent to Rwanda, and say, oh, just under 1,000, and 500 is going to Rwanda, right? In total. I'm sure, because they're breaking records all the time. 13 little boats came over. That's the ones, and literally, yeah, that is the ones that the Coast Guard have stopped. Well, not when I say stopped, picked up. That's those, right? So more might have actually got through. But imagine that, 13 little boats, right? Being launched from from France, and nobody sees anything. The gendarme is just like, we see nothing. We don't know what's going on. Right? Let me tell you this, right? I think that the gendarme, right, if they know that there's no cameras watching, I think that they'll help the people, right, bring the boats and put them in the water. Because these people want to leave to get out of France. And so why would the French say, no, you stay right here. You stay here. Right? Why would the French not just say, no, we'll help you, we'll assist you? In fact, dinghies will be some of the biggest, the massive sellers in our local shops by the beaches. That's how the French are dealing with it. Shareholders have invested a further £750 million into Thames Water. I say, wow, that's nice stuff. But not really, because their debt is 14 billion. So on a debt of 14 billion, you're probably paying like 10, 12 million. You know what I mean? So a month, isn't it? You probably pay 10, 12 million a month on the loan or on the debt or whatever it is. You probably, because you've got to keep furnishing that debt. You can't pay it yearly. So you have to be furnishing that debt monthly. So it's probably about 10 12 million, because it's 14 billion, right? So that might even be, the rates might even be higher than that. But and the Bank of England this year, between now and so probably 2024, I can see at least another 4 to 6 interest rate hikes. It's going to go up even more. And a lot of people say, oh, well, it was 15% back in 17%, 22%. Say, yeah, 22% on a house that costs 15 grand, right? It's a lot different, right, to even 5%, right, on a house that's worth 400 grand. Right? So there is a major difference, major. You know, so it's not even it's not even comparable. So you know, imagine if it does, you know, if it does go to like 8, 9, 10%, then you know, having a debt of that on a house, 400 grand house, would be a lot different in having a debt like that, right? Having, you know, whatever the high percentage went to, the highest percentage went to the 70s or whenever it was. You know, houses when houses was a lot cheaper. I know wages was a lot lower, but houses was a lot cheaper. You know, so there's just no comparison. But a lot of people like to try and compare it, you know. And let's pick up some Brexit. Vauxhall Luton are worried. And they're worried because, you know what? Britain have Brexited. And they know that it's a very short space of time until their business could go kaput over here. Because, you know, remember, you know, the transit factory left this country, went into Germany. So, you know, because these guys run on this thing called just in time. So if people have to cross, you know, and they use a lot of van drivers as well. Like, you know, some independent couriers. I mean, that's dedicated work. I mean, if you've got a courier firm, and you get one of the if you've got one of their contracts, right? You know, that could sustain your business, literally sustain your business, because you're back and forward every day, 5 maybe 6 days a week, cross channel back. So sometimes you might go over. You might do it. Before Britain Brexit, you might have done it 2 or 3 times a day if you could do it that many times. But you know, maybe 2 times a day, you would have been there, back, right? Because you know it was a lot easier to get through. But now, you know, there's a lot more checks. So, and you know, sometimes you see we used to see part built cars on trains, you know, because they, you know, especially something like the Mini. I know it used to go from here into Germany and then back. And then I think it went back to Germany and then back here again. Because obviously they've got the machinery. I mean, you know, so I think that's what used to happen to it. I think it used to cross the channel 4 times. And now you can't do that anymore. So, you know, so that's the reason why that's the reason why Vauxhall. I mean, if Vauxhall have to leave Luton, that's going to be a very, very sad thing for Luton. George Eustace has called for the government to ask young EU workers to come to Britain to boost the economy. George Eustace, a Brexiter, pushed hard for Brexit, and now they need to beg youngsters from the EU to come to this country. I mean, you say, well, how stupid do you feel now? But he doesn't, because you know what? He knows that people that vote for him, right, are as thick as 2 very short planks. And he knows that, you know what? I don't know. I don't need to worry about that, because then people won't even see the hypocrisy in my position. You know, it's the same way, yeah, that in Florida, right, you had, you know, a few weeks ago in Florida, you had these, because that's where not Santos, the other one, Mr. Kinky Boots, right, right, but that's where he's in Florida, right, and he's got the most racist policies, right. He is taking migrants from one state and illegally trafficking them to another state. Because if I had done that, if I went and got a load of migrants and put them in the back of a van or stuck them on an airplane, right, and then took them somewhere else in America, right, they'd throw me in prison, right, for people trafficking, right. But yet for Ron DeSantis is allowed to people traffic, right, and nobody says anything about it, right. And this now, right, is a very similar thing. Obviously, you know, we haven't got George Useless, like, you know, taking people from, like, you know, from, I don't even know where his constituency is, but taking people from Liverpool, say, and then moving them over to Oxfordshire. We haven't got our politicians doing anything like that. But the type of language that he's using, we need, you know, young EU migrants, we need them. Just amazing, isn't it? Jeremy Hunt is set to slash EU red tape in a major what's that say? In a major plan to unlock Britain's potential. And that's where I stopped reading. Right there. I thought, hold on. These people are just joking, right? That's what I think. That's what I think it is. Right? The actual point where I stopped reading, I'll show you exactly where I stopped reading. The protectionist EU rules holding Britain back will be scrapped under plans to unlock growth. Jeremy Hunt will say on Monday. At that point, I stopped reading because it's like, there's actually something wrong with these people. That's what I've worked out. They've actually got something wrong with them because how you can still be pushing the same fucking nonsense now, all these years later. You're still pushing the same nonsense about the protectionist EU rule. What the fuck are you talking about? You have to adhere to the EU's rules, right? So what you can do, right, is you can say, you know what? We're cutting that red tape. We're not going to follow your rules. But get your fucking goods into their territory after that. Get your goods into their territory. Just like, the level of stupidity in this country, it really is something else. You really have to wonder, do you know what I mean? How the hell do these people get to these positions? Oh yeah, I forgot. It's because these are some of the smartest people in the country. Say, give me motherfucking strength. Seriously, right? It's unbelievable, yeah, that these people can still be talking the same bullshit. Protectionist rules. Do you know, I look at the Russians, right, and I think Putin, right, has invited NATO closer to his borders. That's what he's done by his stupidity. Right? We are stupid enough to walk away, right, from some of the richest people in the world, and then we have the stupidest politicians that are so thick that they can say things like this. For me, it's really annoying that these people, right, are allowed to speak in public, are allowed, right, to write articles. Why? And then, because no one says, listen, Jeremy, what do you mean? When you say you're going to cut red tape because it's holding Britain back? What do you mean by that? What exactly do you mean by that? What benefits do you think you're going to get by cutting the red tape that you're saying you're going to cut? What benefits do you think you're going to get? But there's no one there to ask. There's no one there to really to ask these people questions. And to be honest, right, to be honest, they don't even if you ask them the question, they probably just go on to something else anyway. But that's who these people are. Anyway, my friends, listen, I've gone well far over on this video, and I didn't want to go that far. But it is Monday, so I am back from the weekends because it is Monday. My friends, this is By Any Means Necessary. I'm the MC John Ribs. It was really nice to speak to you guys. Comments below.